amen. I would like to present to you an idea today about the future. So as Easter people, we have been talking about faith, hope, and love. And I have introduced this idea called Différance that I get from Jacques Derrida, the idea that whatever it is that we're after, it's both going to be different and it's going to be deferred. And so I want to talk to you about the future today. So for years, as I have taught seminary courses, I have tried to convince my students that the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same, has never been less true than it is right now. I think that a more appropriate saying for the 21st century is, the more things change, the more rapidly they continue to change. I think we need to undo this idea that the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just not as true anymore as it used to be. We live in a time of not just unprecedented, but perpetual change. And it can be really disorienting, and for many of us, a little discouraging. The things that we thought growing up, or even in our adulthood, that we could count on and that were stable, have proven themselves to be chaotic and divisive and unreliable, and for many of us it has caused us a cultural anxiety and a personal sense of insecurity. So I was raised during the Cold War, and so some of you remember that the period between World War II and, say, the fall of communism, the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall, was a time of real stability for some, or at least predictability, even if it had some cultural conflict in it, and a time of upheaval that mostly you knew what you could count on. And then I remember when the end of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the change of communism in Eastern Europe, I remember this thing that sort of seeped into our culture where people started to talk about the end of history. They didn't mean that history was coming to an end. They meant that we had found our final form. That through capitalism, democracy, and nationalism, we basically knew how the world was going to be ordered. And it was a saying developed that it was easier for Christians to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. We couldn't even entertain what came after capitalism. So we tried to tweak and make a little more just all of the bugs within the system, and it became a game of rearranging the pieces on the game board, but the game itself was never called into question. I recently found a quote that I really like that says, "The future was better yesterday." The future was better yesterday. And I think for many of us, and I hear this a lot in church circles, people really do feel like the future was better yesterday. And there's a sense of confusion and maybe hopelessness or discouragement, maybe even despair, or just a lack of orientation, a disorienting, not knowing what life is going to look like, how our society is going to shake out, and sort of where we're going. And so there's a real level of anxiety and concern that permeates so many elements of our society. You see this in environmental issues, economic issues, our medical institutions, our education, our finances, our relationships, our religious communities. In so many areas of life, things are somewhere between concerning and scary. And I sense it in so many arenas as people say, well, we just don't know sort of where we're going with this. So I often quote this philosopher, his name's Slavoj Žižek, and he has a saying that I've really come to embrace, which is this: the light at the end of the tunnel might be another oncoming train. I'll say it again. The light at the end of the tunnel might be another oncoming train. Now, some of you may think it's odd for a Christian minister to say things like this, but as a person of faith, I truly want to be a person who deals in reality And if things are going to get worse, I would like to help get our community prepared for that. So I know this may seem like an odd thing to talk about, but in this time of global pause, I want to have conversations like this because I'll tell you what haunts me. What if we get a second emergency in the next little bit? What if there's an earthquake on the West Coast? What if there's a terrorist attack? What if there's an armed uprising by the Second Amendment folks? What if we have a second emergency inside of this global pandemic? As people of faith, I think we owe it both to ourselves and to our surrounding community to have uncomfortable conversations. What if the light at the end of the tunnel is another oncoming train? Now, here's the problem. We're not all that well equipped to have conversations like this because since the 1950s, the end of World War II, many churches, and specifically mainline churches like the United Methodist, have become, we jokingly say, chaplains of the empire. Basically, their job became a very therapeutic message of sentimentality and helping people be well-adjusted citizens to a stable society. That's what the church did. But now in the 21st century, we live in a time of societal chaos and fragmentation and fracturing. And so the church can't afford to just tell people to be nice to each other and practice some romanticized notion of an imagined past. If anyone can house a conversation about what we need to do during this global time of pause to position ourselves for how we want to come out of this, it's conversational communities like ours, where you have people from different perspectives, different generations who have seen different things, who have different insights, different giftings, different experiences that they bring to the table, so that we can begin to compare notes and say, what if it gets worse from here? What if our political divides? What if our economy? What if our medical institutions, our religious communities, our environment? What if it's not all rosy on the other side of this thing? And what if getting back to normal isn't the fix we needed for the problems that are being exposed by this thing? So, I just wanted to initiate a conversation that I think is going to take us through the summer. From time to time, we'll house it in different environments. When we get back to pub chat, we'll do a night there. We'll do it at Sunday school. We can do it at Bible study. We can have this at different levels, talk and thought. But I just wanted to initiate the conversation and propose these three things in summary. What if the saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same, isn't as true in the 21st century as it used to be? Number two, what if the future was better yesterday? And number three, what if the light at the end of the tunnel is an oncoming train? So those are my three framing proposals that I would love to house a conversation with you, because I have no interest in doing a pie-in-the-sky, starry-eyed optimism if what we need to do right now is to get to work at the grassroots level and to work hard on the ground. Because as people of faith, I want to deal with reality, even if that reality isn't a lot of fun to talk about. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask Joy if she will play us the song Rock of Ages, Cleft for Me. She's going to play us the first and last verse, which fit perfectly right now. Give you some time to think, and then I'm going to invite you to the table to see if you have any feedback on my daring proposal, okay? Joy, will you lead us in this?